This is The Big Breakdown, a long look back at some of the biggest stories we're covering for you at the Hidden Killers Podcast and True Crime Today.
It's one thing to lose a case at trial. It is another thing to lose it before it even starts, because your own team fumbled the ball so hard that the referee calls the whole game off. That's more or less what happened to prosecutors in the Barry Morphew case. In April of 2022, just 9 days before jury selection, all charges against Barry were dropped. Not because he was cleared, not because someone else confessed, not because new evidence came to light, but because the prosecution failed to follow the rules so badly, in fact, that a judge barred most of their key witnesses from ever setting foot in the courtroom in that supposed trial. That got called off. This is a podcast where we're going to break down why that trial, why the initial one was called off. What does it say about the case? What does it say about the case going forward now that new charges have been brought against Barry Morphew? In the comments, let me know your thoughts on this case. Is this something where they got the solid evidence now and now they can take him out because they have the body? The toxology shows that BAM chemical combination is something that only Barry had access to. And does that make him the killer? Or is this a case of someone being pushed into a corner, someone being framed so they have an answer to what happened to Suzanne Morphew? And Barry just seems to be the one that is an easy target. Tell me in the comment section what your thoughts are. His daughters stand by him. At least as of right now, they sure have been. Will they continue? Time will tell. Again, comments on YouTube. Tell me what your thoughts are. Be sure to press subscribe wherever you're downloading podcasts so you don't miss any of the cases that we cover for you right here at the Hidden Killers Podcast and True Crime Today. At the center of the implosion was something every prosecutor is supposed to treat like sacred law: discovery. That's a process where both sides exchange the evidence they plan to use at trial. The goal is fairness, no surprises, no gotcha moments. If you're charging someone with murder, the defense has a right to know what you're bringing to court. And in this case, that's exactly where things went off the rails. It started with DNA. During the early stages of the investigation into Suzanne Morphew's disappearance, forensic teams found male DNA on some of her belongings, specifically her Range Rover and her bike helmet. This is not Barry's DNA. That much was clear. What it was run through is a national CODIS database. And it matched profiles from unsolved sexual assault cases in other states. In other words, there were DNA hits that connected to known active criminal investigations. It's the kind of thing you'd think might be relevant in a murder case, especially one without a body. But here's the kicker: that information wasn't shared with Barry's defense team until many months later. It wasn't just a delay. It was a pattern. Prosecutors didn't document key meetings with forensic analysts. Investigators from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation met with the DA's team to discuss the DNA findings, and somehow no one took notes. No reports, no official summaries, just a room full of people talking about evidence that could point to someone other than the man on trial. And not a single sheet of paper to show for it. When the defense eventually learned about those meetings and asked for documentation, they were told they didn't exist. Not because it wasn't important, but because no one had written anything down. Meanwhile, court orders were being ignored. Back in 2021, a judge had directed the DA's office to preserve emails from law enforcement related to the case, not just as a courtesy. This was a direct judicial order, but emails still lost. These are the things that can completely derail a trial. Even if you have someone that looks pretty damn guilty, if you don't follow the rules over here and the process, and it looks remotely suspicious or weird or incompetent, murderers can go free. And I'm not saying he's a murderer. I don't know the answer to that question. But I'm saying it is important to follow the rules. Witnesses later admitted they didn't fully understand the order. They weren't following it consistently. Either way, potential crucial communications between investigators and prosecutors vanished. It was like evidence was falling through the cracks of a case that was already leaking from every side. Then came the expert witnesses. When the prosecution announced its intent to try Barry Morphew, they came loaded with experts, people who specialized in DNA analysis, vehicle telematics, cell phone forensics, and so on. These were the witnesses meant to tie the digital trail together, to explain the chipmunk-chasing phone pings, to walk the jury through the truck data, to build narrative around what happened the day Suzanne disappeared. But court rules require that those experts and their reports be disclosed by a firm deadline. The DA's office missed it more than once. By the time the judge reviewed the mess, he wasn't buying excuses. And a ruling handed down March of 2022, Judge Ramsey Lama barred 11 of the prosecutor's 16 expert witnesses from testifying. A few weeks later, more were excluded, either by court order or by stipulation. In total, 14 expert witnesses were taken off the board basically as a punishment. It was a massive blow. These were the people who could explain the technical evidence. Without them, the state's case wasn't just wounded, it was practically hollow. And Judge Lama didn't stop at exclusion. He made it clear exactly how serious the situation had become. In a written order, he stated that the prosecution had shown a continuing pattern of negligence, and in his words, arguably reckless disregard for the rules. What he didn't go as far as calling it was intentional misconduct. He emphasized that the repeated violations had deeply harmed the integrity of the trial process. It wasn't one error. It was a series of them. And they all added up to a case that, in the judge's view, had been hobbled by the police trying to bring it to court. So here's where we land. The prosecution had critical DNA results that they didn't share. They held meetings about that DNA without documenting anything. They lost or failed to preserve emails that were supposed to be retained. They missed expert disclosure deadlines. And after all of that, when their expert witnesses were tossed out and their case was stripped to the bone, they were left standing in the courtroom with a stack of circumstantial evidence and a trial date 9 days away. It's one thing to argue through a case in front of a jury. It's another thing to walk into a trial knowing the most important experts can't speak. Your timelines are incomplete, and your opponents are going to hammer you with your own paperwork problems. At that point, you're not preparing for trial, you're preparing for disaster, which is exactly why just over a week before it all began, the district attorney's office walked into court and asked for a dismissal. They didn't say the case was wrong. They didn't say Barry Morphew was innocent. But they didn't admit that they did admit that they couldn't go forward like this. What they did next would reshape the entire legal trajectory of the Morphew case. 9 days before Barry Morphew's trial was set to begin, the district attorney's office walked into court and hit the brakes on the biggest case that they'd ever filed. No jury had been picked. No opening statements had been made. The courtroom hadn't even set out water pitchers yet. And just like that, the prosecution pulled the plug. They filed a motion to dismiss all charges. Officially, they said they needed more time. Unofficially, everyone could see the real problem. Their case had already been hollowed out by court sanctions, evidence exclusions, and a discovery record so mangled that putting it in front of a jury would have been like trying to plug a leak with tissue paper. The motion was filed on April 19th of 2022, and if you'd been following the case, it was both shocking and entirely predictable. Just weeks earlier, Judge Ramsey Lama had excluded most of the state's expert witnesses, nearly all of them, because the prosecution had failed to meet deadlines, failed to disclose their findings on time, or failed to comply with court orders that any rookie DA should have known better than to ignore. The experts weren't minor players either. They were the ones who were going to explain the truck data, the DNA, the cell phone pings, the physical evidence, and now they were legally barred from testifying. So when the DA walked in with that motion, they did what lawyers do when the ship is halfway underwater and the rescue helicopter isn't coming. They pointed to a new problem. They said they needed more time to search a mountainous area, one they now believe might contain Suzanne Morphew's body. The problem, they said, was snow, deep snow. They couldn't dig. They couldn't search. They didn't want to go to trial without being able to examine the one piece that could contain crucial physical evidence. In a vacuum, that argument might have held up. It sounded like due diligence. Wait to find the body. Don't rush through trial. But it didn't take a legal expert to see what else was going on. The state's evidence had been gutted. Their own misconduct had led to the loss of testimony they'd built the case around, and now they were cornered. Go to trial without the experts and risk an acquittal, or drop the case, regroup, and hope that snow eventually melted into something useful. The motion was careful in its language. The prosecutors didn't say they couldn't prove the case. They said they shouldn't proceed without the best chance to do so. They framed it as being in the interest of justice, to ensure that they had the most complete picture before putting it in front of a jury. And they made one thing very clear. They wanted the charges dismissed without prejudice. That means they could come back later, refile, start over if needed. They weren't conceding defeat. They were asking for a timeout. And Judge Lama agreed. He granted the motion, not because the evidence was bad, not because Barry was innocent, but because the process had gotten so messy, so compromised, that moving forward would have turned the trial into a legal circus. He said the decision was made in the interest of justice, and he left the door wide open for the prosecution to return. No double jeopardy, no legal lockout, just a massive case shelved. For now. Barry Morphew walked out of court that day a free man. Again, no ankle monitor, no charges pending. The courtroom that had been prepped for a trial instead became the backdrop for a press conference. Barry's defense team, led by Eaton, didn't hold back. They called it what they believed it was, a total collapse. They stood by Barry's innocence, arguing that they should never have been charged, or he never should have been charged in the first place, and that the state had built a narrative, not a case. According to Eaton, the dismissal wasn't about evidence waiting to be found under 5 feet of snow. It was about a prosecution that had lost control of its own file and nearly put an innocent man on trial without the basic foundation to do so. The public reaction was divided. Some saw the move as strategic, a DA protecting her case until more could be gathered. Others saw it as a retreat disguised as restraint. Legal analysts were more blunt. Many pointed out that if the prosecution had simply followed procedure, they could have kept their experts and gone to trial as planned. The issue wasn't just the snow. The issue was that their most crucial forensic witnesses were tossed out because they hadn't played by the rules. As one former district attorney put it, you can't ask a jury to trust your theory of a crime when the judge can't even trust your paperwork. And while the court drama faded for a moment, the professional fallout was only beginning. Linda Stanley, the DA who had charged Barry Morphew, soon found herself at the center of an ethics investigation. Among the concerns, her public comments about the case, her alleged mismanagement of discovery, and her handling of expert witness disclosures. She'd appeared on true crime podcasts, gained media interviews while the case was pending, and reportedly ignored court orders that required timely disclosure of evidence. Eventually, the state's disciplinary board opened formal proceedings against her. The findings were not good. Stanley was accused of mishandling the case so egregiously that it violated professional conduct rules, and she was ultimately disbarred. Meanwhile, Barry wasn't done. In the months following the dismissal, he filed a $15 million federal lawsuit alleging civil rights violations and wrongful prosecution. The suit claimed investigators had ignored exculpatory evidence, buried DNA records didn't match Barry, and built a case on interference rather than fact. That lawsuit didn't get far. A federal judge later dismissed it, finding that despite the chaos in court, investigators still had enough probable cause to pursue charges at the time. But for Barry and his legal team, the point had been made. They weren't just trying to beat a murder charge. They were trying to hold the system accountable for what they saw as a rush to convict without the evidence to back it up. The Suzanne Morphew case was never just about what happened on a bike trail. It was also about what happened behind the scenes, in the inboxes, in the courtroom, and the decisions that steered a high-stakes trial off the rails. When the charges were dismissed in April of 22, it wasn't because the truth had been found. It was because the people tasked with uncovering it couldn't get out of their own way. And the vacuum left behind, the story of Suzanne's disappearance, remained unanswered. And now, new charges have been brought against Barry Morphew. The body was found eventually in 23. And the allegations that they're bringing say that a unique combination of chemicals, one specifically called BAM, was found in the body of Suzanne Morphew. It's a very unique combination of chemicals used in darts designed to tranquilize animals. Darts that Barry Morphew used, talked about, bragged about. And it wasn't something you just go to the Cabela's or the Bass Pro to buy more of. These are very controlled substances, sold only by very specific people, with receipts. And guess who the only person in the area is who had access to that chemical, that dart with BAM in it? Barry Morphew. Another piece of circumstantial evidence. That's what the state is saying they found. And now he is charged again with first-degree murder of Suzanne Morphew. Is this a case that's clear-cut enough where you can convict? Is this a case where there's a lot of evidence that points to him, but it's not beyond a reasonable doubt? Or is this a case where someone's being railroaded because they need to pin it on somebody? Or do they? His daughters, the daughters of Suzanne, stand by their dad. And that says a lot. But we have seen many cases where those closest, it's too much of a bridge, too far to believe that your father, your loved one, your mother, whoever it may be, could have done something so heinous to another person that you hold so dear. But it does happen. What are your thoughts?
This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi.
Let's dive into something that's been casting a shadow of doubt from day one over the Barry Morphew investigation. DNA evidence, specifically unidentified male DNA, found in Suzanne Morphew's car and on her bike helmet, discovered back during round one of this legal saga. Now, anytime there's DNA linked to convicted sex offenders, that throws up immediate red flags, especially in a high-stakes murder case like this. You can practically hear Barry's defense attorneys popping champagne when that piece of information surfaced. But before anyone declares victory or reasonable doubt, there's some circumstantial nuance that we have to unravel here. We're talking today with former FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer, who has decades of experience cutting through investigative clutter. It's going to help us understand exactly what investigators found, why this DNA isn't the smoking gun Barry's defense would love it to be, and how something initially alarming like DNA matches to known offenders could end up meaning next to nothing in the big picture. Why does this all matter so much? Because, as Jennifer Coffindaffer will tell us, jurors often latch onto details that sound dramatic on paper, but lose significance under scrutiny. DNA isn't always the rock-solid piece of evidence we assume it is, especially partial DNA, which could match not just a handful, but thousands of unrelated people. It's like claiming you identified someone by a shadow in bad lighting. It feels compelling at first, but the more you examine it, the blurrier it gets. Let's hear what Coffindaffer has to say about the impact this mysterious DNA could have on Barry Morphew's upcoming trial, and whether it's a lifeline for Barry's defense or just another investigative distraction. Let's talk about possible reasonable doubt here in the case of Barry Morphew. One of the big things that they have been pointing at, the defense of Barry Morphew, pointed at round one, before everything went to hell, unidentified male DNA found in Suzanne's car, discovered, and it did kind of complicate the situation. And the male DNA matched up through the CODIS system to people who have been charged with sexual offenses of being offenders. That's a little odd to find that like on the helmet and in the car of this. What's your take on all of that?
Well, you're exactly right. And that's going to be where the defense hangs its hat, is this DNA. We're seeing it already in the Brian Koberger prosecution.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it mentioned related to John O'Keefe on his pants. So this is a big deal from the standpoint of the defense has something. And it looks bad, but let's consider what the FBI experts are saying about this DNA match. That a match just means there are some elements of that DNA, not very many, by the way, that match up to a lot of different people. So then they expanded on that and said, okay, well, how many of these people are even in the vicinity? And they did their investigation and showed that even if you were to believe, like you said kind of earlier, that the Yeti or Sasquatch or something was involved, they went and made sure, or not made sure, but verified that these other third parties were nowhere in the vicinity during the crime. So, they used other investigative techniques to show it's not possible. But as you said, we've seen it before where a juror could just latch onto unknown DNA and just snow out all the other investigation that went on.
So is this a strain of DNA that very unreliable, I guess? I mean, so much with DNA, we think, okay, if it's a match, it's a match. But this sounds like one that wasn't quite the perfect match. And I don't know the terminology off the top of my head to say this is, 1000% what it's going to be. We've heard other DNA cases, like in the Koberger case, where it's like, look, this is him, or it's like it's 1 in some octillion percent that it couldn't be. This strains of it matched up to different people in different places. They've been ruled out as even being possibly there. So what is this DNA? Why is this one turning out to be so unreliable?
Well, DNA relies on not inclusion, but exclusion. It's used to exclude, in the case of Brian Kober, as you mentioned, octillionths, more than anybody in the world, right?
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous number, right? So we know that everybody's excluded, so it has to be Brian's. In this case, they weren't able to exclude everybody because they don't have a full compilation of the DNA. So imagine if you just have, say with a fingerprint, you have a couple whorls or a couple loops. Well, you don't have the entirety of the fingerprint.
Yeah.
So you're saying, okay, well, part of it matches these people, but they don't have the full full compilation of that DNA done, Tony. And the match expert, boy, I tell you, when you read his report, he explains it so well. I don't like that they use the word match, but that's just what they do scientifically, even if it means a little bit of a match or the whole match.
Yeah.
So, they scientifically, you have to at least consider it. But when you add the whole program together, it doesn't match up.
So not super solid in terms of identifying who it could be, because it through CODIS, yes, it matched these people who are in there or matched those specific type of strains, but it could match many people. I would imagine this matches a lot of people who are not in CODIS then as well, who are not convicted sexual offenders. These are just the ones that it matched up to. So not a very solid piece of DNA that was found in that vehicle, or multiple pieces that were found in that vehicle, but it still belongs to someone. Does it matter, though? It's a vehicle. And yes, obviously, she was found dead. But if we can't match this up to somebody, is there other ways of trying to see whose this is? Or does it matter in terms of the investigation? I would certainly think it matters to the defense of Barry, no matter what.
Well, I think the reason it doesn't matter was all the people that it partial matched to, they've excluded as being anywhere in the zip code during the commission of this crime. So it doesn't really matter that they can't figure out who it went back to. They weren't around anytime on May 9th or 10th, 2020. But I agree with you that this will be something that the defense continues to latch onto and try to develop.
If there wasn't enough DNA data in the DNA to do a solid match through CODIS, and I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but if the defense were to try and put this into some sort of like a familial database to try and match up to relatives like we saw with Koberger or something of that nature, would there be enough to do that, to find out, who's in the general area who might be part of this, but who might have the DNA in the car? And it may mean absolutely nothing. It may mean it's somebody she had coffee with and, whatever. Somebody who picked up her bike helmet on the ground one day. There's a lot of things it could be that are absolutely null, means nothing at all. But could they do that? Could they take a look at that and see if they find anything interesting?
Well, I don't think that I'm sure familially. How do you say that?
Familially. Yeah, it's a hard one.
It's a hard one. I think that's not part of this DNA quote unquote match that they've discovered. It definitely, in the report I read, specifically outlined to a lot of different people, and then they narrowed that to 3 people that were in the region, and then they were able to exclude those individuals through all this investigation. So unfortunately, Tony, I don't think we're going to be able to ever know exactly whose DNA that was. Can you imagine, and I've said this too in the Koberger case, how difficult it would be with literally hundreds of people going in and out of that house over those years, even before the kids lived there, right? It's on a banister that people touch all the time. It's just so difficult. You would have to get everybody's DNA. And not only is that cost prohibitive, it's really resource prohibitive. And so but the point is, to me, they took the only 3 possibilities in that region that it partially matched to and excluded them.
And that's a big thing. Well, that'll be argued. But again, how will the jury interpret it once it gets to trial, if we get to trial? Because again, charges are brand new here right now. We're going to see how this plays out. Very likely it will get there. Here's another big point, and I'm playing devil's advocate now just to see, what do you think of some of this? The fact that his 2 daughters, their mother's dead, they still stick by dad, at least as of now, at least as from what we've seen. They've been standing by dad through all of this, new charges against him. Obviously, it'd be a very difficult thing to try and wrap your mind around, that dad may have killed mom in a fit of rage with a tranquilizer dart, but they're still there. And it's been many, many years now. Obviously, these new charges have come about, so we'll see where they stand now. But what does that say about this case, that even the daughters are not sitting there questioning any of this?
Well, we've seen it in so many cases where particularly children over sisters and parents and everything really stick by their family, by their father, for heaven's sakes. It's so hard to get your mind around. Not only do we not have our mother anymore, but our father could be responsible. I think it's something that no child would ever want to face or accept. And I don't know to the degree that they have sorted through that evidence, but my guess is who would ever want to do that as a child? So at least at this point, I think the children will continue to support him. I think the jury, if this goes to trial, which I think it will continue to, look at them. They'll be assessing him. They'll be assessing that his children are there. His children will likely testify on his behalf, even though they weren't there. To be clear, they didn't come until the 10th, and they said, "Oh my gosh, here we are for Mother's Day, and Mom's not here."
Yeah,
and which, as you pointed out earlier, another piece that doesn't make sense. It made sense to me that Barry wasn't there, but for those girls, why would the mom be gone? Like initially on Mother's Day, big red light, flashing light there.
Yeah, rather bizarre. Another thing that kind of struck me about this, looking back on it, when all this broke just the other week, the fact that Barry filed that $15 million lawsuit alleging malicious prosecution, and it ended up being thrown out of court. But if you did this and they dropped the charges against you, and you have the gall to file a $15 million wrongful prosecution lawsuit. That's quite a ballsy move, to put it bluntly, if you did it. That to me struck me as a little bit odd the whole time. I would think if you have absolutely nothing to hide, yeah, go ahead, file your lawsuit. But I think that would open up the door to a lot more discovery and possibilities. I know it's been thrown out, but he had the wherewithal to file it at one point in time. Is that the work of a guilty person?
Well, I think it's the work of somebody that is just continuing with the cover up and continuing with feigning innocence to his children and to everyone else, right? You don't want to be, I mean, just think of all the individuals that think he murdered her based on the initial indictment and all the information that was disclosed in that complaint, all those details that we're seeing again in this indictment in part. So even though you might have had charges dismissed, you still have a community and individuals who read that, and certainly in social media, everybody thinking you still did it. You might be free, might not be charged, but everybody thinks you did it. So what's that saying, Tony? The best defense is a good offense, right? So I think that that's how he was playing his cards. I think his daughters could have possibly, we don't know, but family and friends saying, listen, they prosecuted you maliciously, you should go after them. And so I could see him saying, you're right, I'm going to do it.
And just playing the role.
It doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
Yeah, basically calling their bluff while you're bluffing. And that's quite the move. He does seem like a guy, I mean, from the little bit that we've seen, that he's got a strong personality, and I think he's going to make people believe what he wants them to believe, and it's probably worked out fairly well for most of his life. But this is going to be an interesting challenge here as this begins to roll on. I'm expecting we're going to hear probably he's going to plead not guilty. I don't know, he hasn't pled yet as of our recording, correct? This has happened on, I believe, Friday.
It happened on Friday, and the first hearing, of course, is the extradition hearing. He waived extradition, meaning he said, no problem, I'm going back to Colorado. Yep. And so he's there to face charges, so the transportation and so forth. But at arraignment, of course, he will plead not guilty. And, I think the fight's going to be on to the extent he has the money. And then it'll probably go to the public defender, unless, he decides to get a GoFundMe. I haven't looked to see if he has one, and his daughters and everybody starts to try to rally behind his innocence and raise money. We've seen that before. So, but I don't think he has a lot compared to the first time. He had that beautiful home. But now, he's purportedly living in a trailer. In fact, the owner of the trailer park was upset, calling everybody out. Listen, this isn't Barry Morphew's trailer park. This is mine. He's renting a trailer here. So lay off the, discussion about my trailer park, which I found very interesting. So it leads me to wonder what his means are at this point. Yeah,
that will play a big deal in this. Last time, I don't recall, what was the public perception on this? I mean, obviously, he's not a pretty woman from Massachusetts with a man named a Turtle backing him up. But some, I think, could look at this and go, well, there's enough evidence here that does not push it to beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you see that there's going to be a lot of public support for Barry this time around for his defense, or is this one that is going to be more so in the line of, yeah, you probably did it, we're not getting behind you?
Yeah, the groundswell in the true crime community is certainly not that he is innocent, but, we've seen it before. There's definitely a group. They seem to travel from case to case to case, and that group does everything they can to, show any sort of doubt. I'm not even going to call it reasonable, but they wave the flag as if it's reasonable doubt throughout the, airwaves. So will this catch fire? I kind of doubt it. Even, his picture, I don't know if you saw his booking photo. It looked like he literally aged 30 years.
He does, yeah.
It was something.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't come off as likable. And I think people truly feel for this victim, Suzanne Morphew. 25 years, and we're just getting to substantial charges that are seemingly going to stick. So she's a very, a victim that I think a lot of people can empathize with.
So here we are after unpacking this old DNA mess with Jennifer Coffindaffer. One thing is clear. Forensic evidence is never as straightforward as TV dramas might lead you to believe. It's tempting, especially for the defense, to wave around unidentified male DNA and say, look, reasonable doubt served on a silver platter right here for you. But as Coffindaffer expertly explained, this DNA isn't a neat, tidy fingerprint pointing straight to another culprit. It is fragmented, incomplete, and frankly unreliable for solid identification. The FBI's painstaking efforts ruled out anyone in this area who even partially matched that mysterious DNA, leaving the defense clutching at straws. But let's be real. The courtroom is not a science lab, and juries are not forensic experts. The defense knows jurors might latch onto even the smallest uncertainty, like it's a lifeboat. This isn't a unique challenge. We've seen high-profile trials hinge on far less. Barry Morphew's defense doesn't have to prove he's innocent. They just have to sprinkle enough confusion to muddy the waters and plant those seeds of doubt. Then there's the emotional wild card, the fact that Barry's daughters, who lost their mother under incredibly suspicious circumstances, are still standing firmly by their dad. Is it loyalty? Denial? Something deeper? Either way, it's a powerful visual in the courtroom and something jurors inevitably will weigh, even subconsciously. As Jennifer pointed out, it's tough for anyone, especially adult kids, to wrap their heads around the idea that their own father might have committed such a horrific act. That's psychological territory nobody wants to explore, especially not the public, in a public stage of a murder trial. Let's not overlook Barry's audacious move, filing that $15 million malicious prosecution lawsuit after his first charges collapsed. Guilty or innocent, that takes guts or almost an alarming level of denial. But as Coffindaffer put it perfectly, sometimes the best defense really is an aggressive offense. Barry played the cards boldly, once betting on prosecutorial missteps. With these fresh charges and stronger evidence emerging, that strategy might not work a second time. Bottom line, as this trial inches closer, the battle lines are clear. Barry's attorneys will weave this DNA like a banner. They're going to wave it hard into the case, shouting about reasonable doubt. The prosecution will calmly pick apart those claims piece by piece, pointing to investigative rigor and forensic clarity. And somewhere between the dramatic headlines and the meticulous science that lies the truth. A truth the jury ultimately will have to uncover. But will they? Tell me what you think in the comments section. Is there enough reasonable doubt here that Barry Morphew should not go to prison for the murder of his wife that he's alleged to have committed? Or is it pretty solid? Ultimately, a jury is going to understand. But what do you think? What do you think the evidence points to in this case?
This is Murder in the Morning with Tony Bruschi and Stacey Cole.
Barry Morphew. Let's talk about him for a little bit. In innocence versus guilt. There's a lot in this case. It's not as cut and dry as it seems now that it's just kind of reemerged. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence in here, and there seems to be a lot of possible reasonable doubt, dare I say. I don't know. I mean, the evidence points one way pretty strongly, but I think a jury could be confused. He was first thrust into the national spotlight in May of 2020 when his wife, Suzanne Morphew, vanished from their home in Salida, Colorado. I was just talking about Salida the other day in the Cow Palace. Wasn't that on this show? Was it a different show?
It was a different show. Is it Selena or is it Salina?
Salida, Salida.
Really? See, I would have totally pronounced it the other way.
No, Salida, Colorado. They have this old, and somebody has redone it, and they've made it into a cool hotel again. When I stayed there several years ago, it was a sad, rejected holodome that had been falling into utter disrepair for many years, and it was neat to see, but it was yucky. And it closed down for a little bit, and now somebody bought it, and they've brought it back up to standards. It looks like anyway. That's my memory of Salida, Colorado. It's if you're driving out that way, it's a common kind of stop middle ground area. Anyway, she disappeared on Mother's Day weekend. Barry told police she went for a bike ride and never returned, but almost immediately investigators began to suspect foul play, and Barry became their primary focus. A year later, in 2021, he was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder, even though Suzanne's body hadn't been found yet. Prosecutors laid out a circumstantial case built on digital data, suspicious behavior, and a crumbling marriage. But after major missteps by the prosecution, including withheld evidence and discovery violations, the case collapsed in 2022 and the charges were dropped because they didn't have enough. And they had a lot of violations. The judge basically said, okay, and your punishment for all of this is you can't have these 13 witnesses. They were like expert witnesses that tied everything together. So it was like, we're blindfolded and handcuffed. We can't take this case to trial. Eventually, the prosecutor got disbarred for all of this, and it was a whole scuffle. There's new people in charge now, though, and it's actually being charged in a different county. In 2023, Suzanne's remains were finally discovered in a remote area of Colorado. A forensic bombshell then followed. Bam! A rare tranquilizer used in wildlife was found in her bones. Barry, who had experience using BAM from his days as a deer farmer, was re-indicted in 2025. Prosecutors now say this evidence links him to Suzanne's death. Barry Morphew maintains his innocence, and his defense argues the case is still circumstantial, flawed, and built on faulty assumptions. The question facing the courts and the public is whether this time the evidence will finally be enough to hold him accountable. So, do you remember this case from a few years ago?
Vaguely.
Yeah.
What I do want to ask you is, does he really look like Brad Pitt?
Does he look like Brad Pitt?
Yeah, because the graphic that you are using for him, he looks like an older version of Brad Pitt.
I can see I mean, it's based on, it's very, very close to the actual photo that I got. There's so many photos of him out there, and the most recent mugshot, and this is not based on the most recent mugshot, but it's based on this is based on when he did his pleas for her to come back or for her to be released right after. This is how he looked. He looked like he's aged about 30 years in his latest mugshot, by the way.
Possible.
And that was just a few years ago. So, yeah. So, Barry Morphew. We're going to go through the evidence.
I'm always surprised, Tony, when we hear these stories. And again, this is alleged. We're not saying he did this. But if you're in a failing marriage, I understand if you have a lot to lose. I understand if there's a lot of finances involved. And it'd be better if your spouse just died than divorce and have to split everything. But at what point do you kind of go, I can't kill somebody. I shouldn't kill somebody.
Well,
we just need to be done with each other.
But was this, I don't know. I mean, if he did it, was this a crime more of passion than it was a crime of, I want to get rid of you because I don't want to, be financially ruined or split everything with you? I don't know, because this is what happened in this case is she finally sent him a text saying, I'm done, 3 days prior to her death. So I don't know if he knew about the affair. He claims that he didn't. I'm going to guess he probably did. And then, in a fit of anger and rage when she came back, shot her with the tranq gun. But what was the goal with the tranq gun? If you shoot her with it, was it knowing you're going to kill her and then you're going to just drop her off. I mean, how she got to where she got, I don't know how she got there. Was it to scare her, or did you know that that dart was going to kill her? I don't know. I don't know.
See, and that's the part that baffles my mind. I mean,
it's certainly enough to
kill someone. Are you that angry that you would do that to your spouse?
Well, and if you're going to do that, I mean, was it tranq dart so it was less messy? You know, there's not bullets and blood and stuff everywhere. And they just thought that, I don't know. But the thing is, they did not find evidence in his home of having that BAM at the time of the murder. There's a purchase history that he bought it in Indiana prior to 2018 when they lived there, but there's no purchase history of it after that. I mean, could he still have it? You know, did he have it and dispose of it? Did he have like a dart or two? I don't know.
Could have.
And then when they looked at the gun again, I mean, this just plays into the evidence. If you're trying to hide something, the gun was not in working order when they found it. But I guess if you kill someone with it, you may want to make it not in working order if they're going to look for it. Or, I don't know, get it out of your property. But
right?
I mean, there's people disappear weapons all the time. Anyway, there's a lot of questions here. And there's a lot of really hard evidence against him. So let's start with the evidence supporting guilt and kind of work our way through. And in the comments section of this, let us know what you think. Either way, on a specific point or whatever. I'm curious to get kind of a gauge on this. I think overwhelmingly feels people are very much in the guilt area of this. But I'm curious, if you think he's innocent, why? What would be the evidence for it other than... is it just not enough to convict? So the evidence, number one, this is the new big piece, the BAM tranquilizer detected in Suzanne's bones. Forensic analysis conducted after Suzanne's remains were found in 2023 revealed the presence of these three chemicals that make up BAM. I'm not even going to try to pronounce them. It's a rare veterinary sedative. It's a cocktail that's known as BAM. Are you familiar with this, veterinary lady?
Let me go look BAM.
Butorphanol. Bronafol.
One sec here.
Brotafol. Azaprom.
Butorphanol?
What?
Is it butorphanol?
Yeah, butorphanol. Yep.
It's butorphanol.
Okay, I'm never going to say it again.
Butorphanol.
Butorphanol. I'll know it now when I go to CVS. I'll ask for the butorphanol.
Oh, okay. So... oh, yeah, this is commonly used. Absolutely. I'm looking this up.
Okay. So the sedative, it's a cocktail known as BAM. It's used exclusively for sedating large animals like deer and bears. Investigators traced Barry's purchase history and found he obtained BAM while operating that deer thing in Indiana. No other private citizen in the region had access to it, allegedly. Suzanne's cause of death was ruled homicide in the setting of BAM intoxication, directly linking her to the substance that was in Barry's presence at one point in time.
So this is basically a cocktail that you would use to sedate a pet before you would put them under for anesthesia. It's not typical in a veterinary setting. Yeah. It's more for wildlife. But it basically suppresses a lot of systems in the body.
Sure. So if a person got it, they die.
It depends on the dosage and how it's administered. Now, I've known a couple of people who've had needle sticks by accident, meaning you're injecting a pet with something, they flinch, all of a sudden you flinch, and you stab yourself with it.
Yeah.
I've known somebody, a fellow vet nurse, that was stabbed with basically what they use for euthanasia after they had already done it. But she got a needle stick with it, and it wasn't enough, but her hand swelled up.
I mean, a stick is one thing. It's another thing to be injected with it. I mean,
correct. So if this dart was loaded up with a full dose, it could have suppressed her breathing enough that she might have needed support to keep her alive, meaning either somebody, giving her breaths or compressions if her heart stopped. And if he wasn't going to do that and just let her go, bye-bye.
A plastic syringe cap from a tranquilizer dart found in the family dryer.
That's a problem. Now,
with his
however,
pants.
I've had many of those go through my washer and dryer, but I was a veterinary technician.
Sure. A clear plastic cap from the Pnew Dart brand tranquilizer syringe was found in the dryer with Barry's clothing shortly after Suzanne disappeared. No fingerprints or DNA were found on the cap, but I mean, it did run through the dryer. Investigators used it as circumstantial support for the theory that Barry loaded a tranquilizer dart and the cap ended up in the laundry. The evidence took the greater weight once BAM was confirmed to be in Suzanne's remains. So I'm thinking he loaded it up. He put the cap in his pocket when he was doing it and didn't remember to get rid of that. If he did it. Yeah. And here's another fun one. Barry's phone went into airplane mode during the critical window on May 9th, 2020. No way. Well,
where have we seen that?
It's like he's thinking of things. The afternoon Suzanne was last heard from, Barry's phone stopped transmitting location data at 2:27 p.m. shortly after Suzanne sent her last known selfie. The phone remained in airplane mode for nearly 8 hours. The blackout occurred precisely during the window investigators believe Suzanne was killed. Barry's phone reconnected around 10:17 p.m. after he allegedly had time to clean up and plan the next moves. That's what prosecutors are alleging.
That doesn't sound good.
Airplane mode. Well, I guess if he's going to go take her body somewhere, then that's
When's the last time you had your phone in airplane mode?
Not on an airplane.
Yeah, you're one of those naughty people.
No, actually, I will put it in airplane mode, and I'll put it on low power mode when I travel, so it doesn't eat up the battery. So I'm fine with that. But I do turn it on when we're getting close to landing when I'm starting to get a signal again. They don't even ask you to turn it off anymore.
Planes don't crash from that. I'm sorry. They just don't.
Did they even say anything anymore about it? I didn't even know the last time.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't, yeah.
Yeah, they still want you to put it in airplane mode, but most planes, once you put it in airplane mode, you can still use Wi-Fi if they've got it.
I'm sorry. If my cell phone is scary enough to take down that airplane, I think we have bigger problems going on here.
Yeah, I think the technology is such that it's not much of an issue anymore. Yeah. But again, when's the last time you put that phone in airplane mode? For me, probably, gosh.
If I was trying to conserve the battery, I don't
even do that. I just go to low power. I don't even bother with airplane mode.
I don't know what it would be anymore. I mean, that'd probably be the last time I would have done it was before I did low power mode. So I don't even know.
I think it would be an interesting character study. Like, let's look at your phone habits. When did you put your phone in airplane mode? If it's something you normally do, that doesn't stand out then.
That's a big thing.
But if you never do it, and this guy did it around the exact time her phone stopped working.
So you got to look at a bigger span of time on his cell phone history. And if it shows that he does it regularly, it's not a standout. If it's out of nowhere, that's a deviation from...
Correct.
And then that's where you're going to have something. The vehicle, I can never say this word, telemetry. For whatever. When I look at it, I can't say it. If I'm just looking elsewhere, I can. I can't if I'm looking at the word. Anyway, there was gaps there. Suspicious behavior on May 10th. Barry's Ford pickup truck recorded no telemetry. I had to turn my head. Data. From 3:30 a.m. to 8:10 a.m. on May 10th, the morning Suzanne was reported missing. Investigators believe Barry may have disabled tracking intentionally while disposing of her body. When the data resumed, the truck was already in Broomfield, skipping logs of the drive north entirely. Wow. So he knew how to do that. So he was... And what are you going to say? Barry, great. I mean, that's... But you should have disabled that shit like... months before this even started. Not like right now, let's disable this.
Yeah. It's a little sketchy.
Yeah. Surveillance footage shows Barry making multiple trash dumps on May 10th, 2020. Barry was caught in surveillance video at multiple commercial dumpsters around Broomfield, throwing away trash bags. He could not later identify what he discarded. Investigators suspect this was in an effort to dispose of physical evidence related to Suzanne's disappearance. So he's like, well, it's kind of what I do. I don't want to pay the landfill. 7 different places?
Who does that?
7. I mean, unless you got a lot of trash and all these dumpsters are full. I don't know. I don't know how you... like I said, a lot of circumstantial in this case. Fresh damage to bedroom door frame consistent with forced entry.
Well, that's not good.
The master bedroom door frame showed a fresh crack that wasn't present when the Morphews bought the house. Investigators believe it occurred during a domestic struggle, potentially as Barry forced entry after Suzanne locked herself in. Barry claimed no knowledge of how the damage happened.
Oh, for fruit's sake.
At least make something up. You locked yourself out. Done. There's your story. It's simple.
Don't make it harder than it needs to be.
Yeah, I locked myself out. I didn't have the key, although it'd be pretty easy if it's one of those simple, like stick the needle in.
But no, wait a minute. He is a handy kind of a guy, isn't he? He would know how to open a door.
Yeah, I mean, you would think so. I mean, unless it's why would your bedroom be padlocked? So I'm guessing it's just the regular old door thing.
Sounds like
you would know how that happened. I mean, come on. You would know how that happened in your own house.
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know. She fell down the stairs.
Yeah.
Because people do that every day. That was always my favorite. Like, you see somebody come to work and they have a black eye. Oh, I tripped down the stairs.
I hit my head on the doorknob. Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Fresh scratches on Barry's left arm. Photographs taken by law enforcement 3 days after Suzanne went missing show fresh scratches on Barry's arm. Prosecutors allege that they are consistent with fingernail wounds from a physical altercation. Barry did not provide a consistent explanation for the injuries. This is interesting because Barry seems to have plans for a lot of things if he did this. But some of these more obvious ones that you're going to be asked about, I don't know.
How about you figure that out, dude?
That'd be like...
you look down at your arm and go, oh, shit, she scratched me as I was killing her. I better have a story for this.
I mean, go Allegedly. Out and do something. Go do some work. Go cut some wood. Go do something where you're going to get scratched up there, and then you can have a story for it. He didn't think of that. Now, did he? I'm getting good at this.
No, but you did.
I'm getting good at this from listening from all this true crime shit. You got to blend in. That's what I'm understanding from.
Yes, you do.
All of these damn stories. Mm-hmm. Suzanne's deleted message. I'm done. On May 6, 2020, Suzanne texted Barry, I'm done. I could care less what you're up to. We just need to figure this out civilly. Investigators recovered this message from Barry's phone, despite it being deleted. Prosecutors present this as evidence Suzanne was actively trying to leave Barry just 3 days before her disappearance. That's a big one.
Again, kids, can I just share something? You can delete all you want from your phone. It's still there. Sorry. Nice try. Yeah. Once you send it, it's there.
It will be there. It can be found. It's in the cloud. It will be read if there's a murder involving anything near you.
Yep.
Again, kind of surprising. I mean, he seems to be really, I don't know. At first you're like, oh, he's really smart. Then it's like, what? Huh? Maybe he's more like engineer type smart, with his hunting and being very precise on things like that, but not so much in the common sense area of life.
Could be.
Final communications abruptly stopped. Suzanne sent that selfie to her secret lover. Ready? Secret lovers, yeah.
Oh, no.
That's what we are. Who is that? Who's saying secret lovers? DeBarge?
Feels DeBargy to me.
Feels a little DeBargy. Yeah. El DeBarge.
Yes. Well, I'd say
The Jets.
DeBarge.
I don't know. Suzanne sent a selfie to her secret lover, Jeff Lieber, at 2:11 p.m. on May 9th. They had exchanged over 50 messages that day. After that
Atlantic
selfie,
Star.
Atlantic Star. I was in the
right 80s ballpark.
Right 80s ballpark. Light rock, let's talk. Light 94.3. That was Secret Lover by Atlantic Star. Now let's talk about the murder of Suzanne Morphew. Right after your 5-day forecast. Partly cloudy tonight, 42. Sunshine tomorrow, 75. After the selfie, she never responded again. remember stations that would talk like that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. The last digital footprint of Suzanne's life lines up exactly with Barry's phone going dark. Behavior inconsistent with a concerned spouse. Of course, after being told Suzanne was missing, Barry did not call her phone, rush home, or participate in volunteer searches, allegedly. Instead, he cleared his work truck, ran personal errands, and took hours before returning to Salida. This absence of urgency was noted by officers and is presented as behavior inconsistent with panic or concern. There you go. That's that side of the equation. That is the arguments of guilt that the prosecution and the DA is bringing against him. So, evidence supporting innocence or reasonable doubt. Let's see if this introduces reasonable doubt to you, Stacey.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Unidentified male DNA in Suzanne's vehicle and on the helmet of her bike helmet. Forensic testing revealed male DNA on Suzanne's car glove box and her bike helmet. The DNA did not match Barry Morphew. Partial matches through CODIS linked to profiles from other unsolved sexual assaults in Arizona and Illinois. The defense argues that this could indicate a possible alternate suspect. Investigators later said they traced 3 partial matches and ruled them out geographically, but the DNA itself has never been definitively identified. So it doesn't mean categorically this is from a sexual predator.
Okay.
It just means that there's some sexual predators in the CODIS system that have a partial match to this DNA string. So it could mean many different people. It's not a super, 1 in 1 gazillion type chance match here. They were more so putting this in there to see, is there a match? Is there a partial match? If it's geographically sound, who could those people be? Could they be in the circle of Suzanne? And could that, be part of this? Or could this be a random person that is just in the area? So partial match on that. The question
and that was on her helmet.
On her helmet and on the glove box in her car.
So is it?
It probably will statistically also match far more non-sexual predators. Because there's far more non-sexual predators in a database than there are actual predators. So if we took everybody's DNA, you got those 3 that showed up and probably thousands over here that would also match partially.
I guess it depends on who touched her helmet. Did she maybe have it in her car and she had her car worked on? Somebody went in the glove compartment.
Yeah.
Moved her helmet out of the way.
Well, there's a lot of things possible. Just using your helmet, having your helmet, sounds like she likes to bike a lot. So she'd be out, maybe take it off, put it. There's a lot of ways other DNA could be on the thing.
She could have stuck it on her handlebar while she got off to grab an ice cream cone at Dairy Queen, and it fell, and some guy picked it up and put it back for her.
The funny thing is, when I was thinking of a bike rack, I was thinking of a Dairy Queen.
That's why we work together, man.
I was thinking of the Dairy Queen I would ride my bike to.
See?
And I was almost going to go there, and you went there. I would get the green Mr. Misty.
See, I always got the red one.
Yeah, it's like cough syrup. And I don't like red drinks or it always reminds me of like Robitussin or something.
Oof.
There was Mr. Misty and there was like Mr. Freezy, wasn't there? Weren't there? Did they have two different types of slushies?
I think so. One had ice cream in it.
Oh, I didn't know that. I always got the one that didn't have the ice cream in it.
That was the Mr. Misty.
I was robbed.
It was the Mr. Misty float.
I didn't know that. I was robbed.
Had the ice cream.
Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, partial type matches. Yeah, but the bike helmet that makes total sense. So, I mean, and I don't know. I mean, she's out. She's living her life. Doesn't sound like she's all that close to him anymore. Maybe there's been men that have gotten in and out of her car. Not for anything nefarious, just friends, life.
What about the alleged affair partner?
The alleged affair partner. Well, they checked his DNA and it wasn't his.
It wasn't a match. Okay.
No. But look, people come and go. People have friends. People, it's not insane to think other people's DNA are in your vehicle. I mean, It just is. I think almost everybody out there, unless you are completely isolated, like myself, although even I have other people's DNA in my car because people ride in the car with me. But the DNA itself has never been definitively identified. So there's that. No direct forensic evidence linking Barry to Suzanne's remains. Suzanne's remains were found 40 plus miles south of the Morphew home in Moffat, Colorado. No Barry Morphew DNA, fingernails, or personal items were linked to the burial site. While BAM was found in her bones, no tranquilizer vials or chemical packaging were recovered from Barry's home or vehicles during the 2020 investigation. So there's that. But again, you'd think you're going to dispose of anything that pretty quickly, and your phone did go dead or airplane mode for a good 8 hours. I'm going to guess things that you don't want to be found would be, gotten rid of. Then there's the dart gun. It was not proven to be recently used. Investigators found that dart gun, the darts in Barry's garage safe, but the gun was not proven to have been recently used. The syringe cap in the dryer had no biological material, fingerprints, or detectable residue either. The defense argues it could have been from the past deer tranquilizing incident years earlier and was circumstantial at best. So, I don't know. I guess you wonder how, if he's not doing the deer thing anymore, why would, I don't know. I mean, was it old clothes that you're washing and it came out of an old pocket? I have stuff like that. You're like, oh my God, I forgot I won this at the carnival in 1989.
It's odd. The timing is odd, especially if that's how that's what they found in her body.
Yeah, it is.
And she just, 3 days earlier said, we're done. Mm-hmm. The timing is very suspicious. Yep.
Suzanne's cause of death remains ambiguous. Well, not anymore. They did put the BAM in there. Suzanne's remains show no defensive signs of trauma. No gunshot wounds or broken bones were found. Her death was ruled a homicide in the setting of BAM intoxication. But the exact method, the overdose or suffocation, could not be confirmed. The this is another word. When I look at it,
ambiguity.
Ambiguity. If I'm looking at it, I can't say it. I have to glance other way. Could weaken the prosecution's narrative in court. All evidence is circumstantial. No eyewitness or confession. There's no known eyewitness, surveillance, or audio recording proving Barry killed Suzanne. The case is built entirely on a timeline and inferences. Prosecutors themselves acknowledge the case is circumstantial, which leaves more room for defense arguments around reasonable doubt. You got the phone and truck gaps that may have alternative explanations. While Barry's devices did go dark, there are possible innocent explanations, they argue, including phone battery failure or truck data gaps due to mechanical or software issues. Ghosts. No direct evidence proves he tampered with the devices to evade detection. Well, how close did they look at that? The prosecution misconduct in 2022 also undermines the credibility. The original prosecution team, led by DA Linda Stanley, failed to turn over key DNA evidence in a timely manner, resulting in the exclusion of 14 expert witnesses. Judge Lama noted a pattern of discovery violations. The case was dismissed without prejudice in April of 2022. The defense argued that these systematic failures reflect a rush to convict without a complete investigation. You also got the mystery DNA. not explained or excluded. The defense points out that the unidentified DNA on Suzanne's belongings was never conclusively explained. Prosecutors say alternate suspects were excluded, but the origins of the DNA remain unknown, something they believe could create doubt in the jury's mind. And no recovered murder weapon or cleanup evidence. Investigators never found a murder weapon, although there was the unused or not usable gun in the house, and no signs of a cleanup were documented at the house. Barry's home was forensically examined, and no traces of blood, DNA transfer, or Suzanne's personal items linked to the violence were found. That's interesting. But if you just tranquilized someone, you might not have a whole lot to clean up.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not like he took a machete and did something and had,
Barry's daughters continue to support him throughout the case. His daughters have stood by their father, insisting he could not have harmed their mother. Their loyalty could influence a jury's perception, especially since they were both close to both of the parents and had not distanced themselves even after the re-indictment, at least not as of now. The re-indictment was just a few days ago.
Boy. I don't know. What do you think?
I would guess he did it, but I do think that there's a lot of reasonable doubt that a jury could inference. I don't think I would look at it as reasonable doubt if I were on the jury, but I think a lot of juries could feel that way. Because you got to look at it like a puzzle, You got the whole damn thing put together, and then you're missing the nose of Barry, if the Barry is the puzzle here. You don't have that piece, but you have the rest of it. And you're going, oh, it's a puzzle of Barry Morphew. No, it's not. Why would it not be? Well, you don't have that piece. Well, I can look at the rest of the picture and look, and it's Barry Morphew. So that is where that would be, pretty much to the point where you could convict because you have enough pieces of the evidence. It's what circumstantial evidence essentially is. And you have enough that points directly to this. But if you're going to get hung up on the puzzle piece, because yes, you could be surprised that piece goes in there, and for whatever reason, the picture that is taken from Barry Morphew's house of Barry Morphew could in fact be some other guy that looks like Barry Morphew. Has a totally different nose, looks kind of like Michael Jackson, and has whiskers on that piece of the puzzle. That could be what the piece is if you found it. Is it likely to be that? Is there anything in the world that would point to it being something like that? No. Could it be? Sure. But that's not reasonable. That's the reasonable part of the doubt.
This would be a tough case for a jury.
I think it would be, honestly. I mean, I think he's guilty as sin. That's my opinion. There's just too many weird things that are going on circumstantially here based on what we've seen that really point to his guilt. Unless they're going to argue that these things that the prosecution is saying happened didn't happen.
I don't know. The fact that he had access to these tranquilizers and then that was found in her body, to me, that just...
Well, and another interesting thing about this, though, too, is when questioned, like his story emotes all of these things. He talks about using tranquilizer darts, not even questioned about it, and what he did with deer back in Indiana, I believe. And he walks them up to like everything that they're saying he did. So it's like, would you do that? Are you trying to hide in plain sight, or are they taking what his statements are and then trying to match it to it being him?
Yeah.
Because he's walking them up to yeah. I mean, I don't know yet. I mean, just starting to get into this case, on the surface, it does look very guilty But is it that? I don't know. I think we got to keep looking at it. We got to keep listening to the evidence and the statements and other people who looked at this case 3 years ago. You have far more than I do because I don't remember a ton about it. So I am just absorbing it right now. So please, in the comments, tell me what you think about this whole damn thing. Guilty? Not guilty? There's a lot of the evidence. Are there other pieces we're missing and haven't talked about yet? Put that in the comments too. Want to hear what you think. On the surface, your thoughts?
It feels guilty to me.
Yeah.
Again, innocent until proven guilty. But I think the text, we're done. Access to the BAM. I don't have access to the BAM. I don't work in a vet clinic anymore. But even when I worked there, a lot of that stuff was locked up. I didn't have access to it.
Well, I mean, he did have access to it years ago, but there's no evidence he had it then. I mean, you get rid of it, though. I mean, it's not a crazy thing to say we're just going to go get rid of it and it's gone. I mean, that's not a bridge too far. But he had ordered it in the past. There wasn't any record of recent orders, so it would just be his previous stock, which if he's not doing that anymore, he probably would have some of.
You could, and it would be most likely expired, but that doesn't mean it's ineffective.
Yeah.
It could still work.
It's just not extra strength. It's just diet.
It might lose its potency, but it would still do the trick if you had enough.
It's like Pepsi free.
This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
Let's be honest. When someone vanishes on Mother's Day and the husband's first move is to point at a missing mountain bike, we're in for a wild one. Suzanne Morphew was supposed to spend May 10, 2020, enjoying breakfast in bed or a phone call from her daughters. Instead, she vanished into thin air. No witnesses, no obvious crime scene, just a bike dumped like a stage prop in the bushes and a husband spinning a tale about a Sunday ride gone wrong. But investigators weren't buying it. And over time, the story that unraveled didn't just implicate Barry Morphew, it practically had him in the starring role. And with a new 2025 indictment on deck, this case just got a lot more interesting. Let's start with the biggest red flag waving in the wind like a Home Depot tarp. Suzanne's remains were found in 2023, buried in a shallow grave over 40 miles away from her home. After more than 3 years of searching, they didn't just find bones. They found BAM in her bones. Not BAM, like an exclamation. BAM! As in butorphanol, acetaminophen, and medetomidine, a veterinary tranquilizer so niche, it's basically the artisanal cocktail of chemical sedatives. And guess who was the only private citizen in the entire region with a history of buying that exact combination? That's right, Barry. Allegedly, he used it back in Indiana to tranquilize deer because, sure, nothing says wholesome rural vibes like drugging wildlife to saw off their antlers for resale. But finding BAM in Suzanne's bones wasn't just a forensic curiosity, it was a forensic mic drop. This wasn't residue on her clothes or something on her skin. This stuff had metabolized. It was deep in her bones, meaning she'd been dosed, absorbed it into her system, and died with it still circulating. Not only that, but BAM isn't just something you casually leave lying around in your garage. It requires a vet, a prescription, and actual knowledge to use. You have to draw it into a syringe, load it into a tranquilizer dart, and fire it using specific equipment. That level of specificity narrows the suspect pool to, well, one guy. And speaking of darts, let's talk about that curious little plastic cap found in the family dryer alongside Barry's shorts. No fingerprints, no DNA, but come on, what are the odds a cap from a tranquilizer syringe just casually ends up mixed in with your Sunday laundry? Unless Barry's out there running a mobile vet clinic, there's really no good reason for that to be tumbling around with his hands. Prosecutors allege it's circumstantial, sure, but circumstantial with a bullhorn. One small piece of plastic linking Barry to the exact method of death, later confirmed in Suzanne's bones. Then there's the digital ghosting. On the afternoon of May 9, Suzanne sends a sun-drenched selfie to her secret lover, former high school fling she'd reconnected with during a crumbling marriage. Just minutes after that selfie, Barry's phone goes dark. Airplane mode, off the grid, no GPS, no calls, no texts. for nearly 8 hours. This isn't a dead battery moment. This is a window where investigators believe Suzanne was killed, her body transported, and everything covered up. The timing is suspicious enough to make you lean in, but when paired with what happens next, it starts to stink, because the next day, Barry's truck magically stops recording telemetry data. From 3:30 a.m. to 8:10 a.m. on May 10, his vehicle logs nothing. No door openings, no engine starts, no movement. Investigators believe this was deliberate, an intentional disruption to hide where Barry went during those early hours. When the truck starts talking again, it's already in Broomfield, Colorado, exactly where Barry claimed to be going for work. A work trip, by the way, that he didn't tell his coworkers about, showed up early for, stayed barely any time at, and somehow forgot to bring actual work equipment too. Because nothing screams normal contractor behavior like showing up for a job on Mother's Day with no tools. And while he was in Broomfield, Barry wasn't scouring bike trails or knocking on doors. He was dumping trash. A lot of it. Surveillance cameras captured him tossing bag after bag into multiple commercial dumpsters behind hotels, restaurants, gas stations. And when asked what was in the bags, Barry gave one of the most Barry answers imaginable: "I can't remember." Right, because when your wife is missing and the entire state is looking for her, your priority is getting rid of mystery garbage in places with security cameras. Back at home, investigators noticed a fresh crack in the bedroom door frame. A crack the previous homeowner said wasn't there before. When asked, Barry claimed to have no idea how it got there. Investigators believe it was caused during a domestic altercation, possibly when Suzanne locked herself in the bedroom and Barry forced his way in. There were also unexplained scratches on Barry's arm, captured in photos taken by police days after Suzanne vanished. He didn't provide a convincing explanation for them either. Let's just say chipmunk scratches didn't make the final report. Now, layer in the relationship context. Suzanne had told friends she felt unsafe with Barry, that she was done, that she wanted to divorce him. Her final text to Barry, said just 3 days before she disappeared, was blunt. "I'm done. I could care less what you're up to. We just need to figure this out civilly." That message was found deleted from Barry's phone, but investigators recovered it. They also found that Barry had screenshotted that same message, likely because it struck a nerve. Prosecutors now say it shows Barry's motive: control, rage, a desperate need to stop Suzanne from leaving. And then there's the big picture. Suzanne's bike helmet found a mile away from her bike. No blood, no drag marks, no indication she ever rode that bike. It was staged, placed off the side of the road like a sad theatrical prop in a one-man show no one asked for. Suzanne's personal items, her sunglasses, hydration pack, phone, were still at home. Investigators say she never left for a ride. She was already gone. So, what do we have? A woman planning to leave her husband, a rare drug in her bones that only her husband had access to, a syringe cap in his laundry, multiple data blackouts, sketchy dumpster runs, physical evidence of a struggle, and digital footprints that scream, "I did something bad and I'm hiding it." Barry Morphew wasn't caught red-handed, but the digital forensic and behavioral evidence forms a trail. Messy, imperfect, but compelling. That's why in 2025, a grand jury indicted him again, not on hope, but on evidence. Suzanne's voice is gone, but the clues she left behind, her texts, her last selfie, the bam in her bones, are louder than ever. And this time, Barry may not be able to talk his way out of it. Barry maintains his innocence. What will the jury think?
This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi.
When Suzanne Morphew vanished on Mother's Day weekend back in 2020, it felt like one of those maddening true crime cases destined to haunt headlines, but never really delivered any real answers. The picturesque Colorado mountains seemed suddenly sinister as suspicion zeroed in on her husband, Barry Morphew. Even from neighbors to national media, it raised eyebrows. And his odd behavior, shifting alibis, those bizarre public pleas, didn't help that Barry had this unsettling knack for making himself look guiltier every time he opened his mouth. But here is the kicker in this story. Prosecutors got way ahead of themselves, tripping over basic legal rules like rookies and fumbling evidence so badly that Barry's murder charges completely collapsed in 2022. Just like that. Boom. Or bam, maybe we should say. He walked free, leaving everyone frustrated and Suzanne's family heartbroken. For a while, it seemed like another very frustrating example of the system failing. Then, in a wild twist straight out of a Netflix documentary, Suzanne's remains surfaced in 2023, hidden in a remote area of Colorado, and not just bones. Her remains held a chilling, damning clue. Traces of a super rare animal tranquilizer called BAM. Who happened to have exclusive access to BAM? Barry Morphew himself. A hunter and landscaper who, yes, had previously bought the tranquilizer for his deer farming activities. Suddenly, investigators hit exactly what they'd been missing, a forensic smoking gun. Today, we are diving deep into these revelations with retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer, who knows the investigative playbook inside and out. Coffindaffer is going to break down the significance of BAM being found deep within Suzanne's bones and circumstantial evidence prosecutors are betting everything on, and whether the second attempt to convict Barry Morphew will finally stick or fall apart all over again. Jennifer, what's your take thus far?
Well, this is one of those cases that was charged, and actually, even back then, the probable cause was just overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
But there were issues. There were issues in the office of the prosecutor, and essentially, it was dropped without prejudice. And then, lo and behold, Suzanne Morphew's body was found in 2023. Remember, this alleged incident occurred really May 9th, would have been the murder of 2020 into 2010 when, it's believed that he somehow disposed of the body.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are. That body just gave so many clues, specifically that BAM was in the bones.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have BAM in the bones, and then also the fact that it was shown that the body was moved essentially because all the indication is that it wasn't originally there to decompose.
Mm-hmm.
You have even stronger probable cause that he committed this crime.
It's a lot of, a lot here. BAM in the bones. It's, it's horrible. I mean, it sounds strange to say for such a horrible case, but it sounds kind of funny in a weird way. BAM in the bones. If it's in the bones, this is not just in your, in what is left, and I'm not trying to be morbid here, but what is left of your flesh, if there was much left. This is deep. This is in the bones itself. Does that make this even more impactful than just if it was on the tissue and things of that nature, showing that it got that deep into her system, essentially?
Well, I think what makes it so irrefutable is the fact that it's BAM. As you mentioned leading up in the segment, BAM is a very rare tranquilizer that very few want to purchase. And it just so happened in this area, literally, Barry Morphew was the only one to buy it. The law enforcement went back and looked, and this would have been purchased actually in Indiana prior to them moving to Colorado, that it was actually purchased. And again, he was a deer farmer, if you will. And so he often had to tranquilize deer. So this is another, I think, key component to the case. This wasn't just some novice that said, oh, I think I'll just pick up a tranquilizer gun and give this a go. He knew exactly how it worked. It's kind of complicated. You have to take a syringe and then put the BAM into the darts. And so it's a bit complicated. So he was an expert, if you will, at BAM and tranquilizing.
When it comes to something like this, I mean, the fact that it's a little more complex. You got to put it into the dart. You're not just, picking up, a bullet and putting it into your gun or loading a clip. This is a little more in depth. Does that make this even stronger type of ballistics evidence than it would be if it were just a regular old bullet from a box?
Absolutely, because of the specificity of it. It's so unique. people don't normally have BAM in their house. Now, they might have a 9mm in their house, especially in Colorado or other weaponry, but to have this unique tranquilizer that was used, a tranquilizer gun that was found in the gun safe, and another key component was the cap from one of the syringes was actually found in the dryer with men's believed to be Barry's shorts. So that also kind of added up. This is one of these circumstantial evidence cases that when you put all the pieces together, it leads you right down the yellow brick road to Barry Morphew.
It does, but it is a circumstantial evidence case, and that's the problem that we see in so many of these cases is, yes, let's put the pieces of the puzzle together. We have all of the pieces. It's a big Barry Morphew puzzle. His face is on it. He's in the mountains, and you just have that one little piece left to put in, but you can't find it. It's not there. Everybody can look at this and go, well, clearly this is a puzzle of Barry Morphew, but you may have a juror that goes, no, that's Bigfoot. That's Bigfoot. I don't think it's Barry. Like, well, no, it clearly is Barry Morphew. Like, who else would it be? Well, I don't know. That's beyond a reasonable doubt. People don't seem to understand what that means. Okay, so we have this. We got the BAM. We got the bullet cap, which one would, I guess it would be easy to think of. Okay, you take the cap off the dart. You probably threw it in his pocket as he was loading it and all that, and then it's in the dryer. Didn't think about it, and boom, that's where it was found. Beyond that, what are some of the other strong pieces of circumstantial evidence here, and any other evidence that we had leading up to the first arrest before it was all thrown out due to the discovery violations with the prosecution?
Well, the big piece is really, this is a true forensic digital evidence case. This is going to be, to me, one of the strongest components of this prosecution, specifically FBI cast. Fortunately, handled all of it from the beginning. They are the best of the best. And they were able to put together this very interesting timeline showing phone going off, phone going on, the fact that phone pings stopped at a certain point when it's believed he left with her and he left also. So it's commensurate with his phone not pinging anymore with their home. Big gaps that also coincide, as we've seen before, in text stream type information from the vehicle. So when you line up the vehicle information and the cellular information, he basically goes dark for a period of time during what is believed to be the murder of her and the transport of her. In addition, he didn't do what he said he was going to do in terms of his work. He was supposed to meet other coworkers to commute to a place called Broomfield, Colorado, that evening on the 10th. Well, guess what? He decided for some reason to go there early, the early morning of the 10th, not even telling coworkers about it and not showing up to the job site except for a brief time for 2 times and not bringing his equipment to work. So it seemed kind of like a cover up, right? Okay, I've got to dispose of the body. I've got to do this and this. And I guess I'll go to Broomfield to make it look like I went to the job site.
And I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know how his line of work works for when they go and visit places, but it's kind of an odd place to go visit on Mother's Day morning on a Sunday. I don't know. It just seems like an odd time to be going and visiting a job site, but everybody's a little different. That did kind of stand out to me a bit. Does that stand out to you as being weird in terms of just here's where I'm going to go, and this doesn't seem to be an optimal time, especially it is Mother's Day. Why are you leaving your wife alone at home on Mother's Day? And obviously we know there's other things are kind of in a rough spot with the affair situation going on.
Yeah, certainly I would normally think that, but it's clear, even though Barry Morphew, when initially interviewed, lied. He said, oh my gosh, our relationship is great. It's beautiful. She would say the same thing. Well, it was completely on the decline. She wanted a divorce. And he actually screenshotted and saved one of her text messages and got rid of everything else. Their text message strings together. But he screenshotted the one probably because this was just so damning in a sense. I mean, hurtful to him, saying it's over. it's over, Barry. It's over. Let's try to get through this civilly.
Mm-hmm. And obviously something he was not a fan of. He did not like that idea of getting the divorce. And shortly after, it was like 3 days after is when this all occurred, after he received that screenshot. I know it was very, very close.
Yes, yeah, just within days. And, I think that's where the prosecution has a motive they've established, which, again, isn't part of the crime in terms of the statute. But every jury wants to know, why in the world would this guy kill his wife in this horrible way?
So here we are again, right? Another round of charges against Barry Morphew. Only this time prosecutors seem to have learned a thing or two. At least we hope they have. Jennifer Coffindaffer made it clear this isn't your average circumstantial evidence case. This isn't about suspicious phone activity or odd behavior anymore. We now have physical proof connecting Barry to Suzanne's death, courtesy of that creepy, ultra-specific tranquilizer, BAM. But let's be real. Barry Morphew's defense team isn't exactly going to roll over because prosecutors finally got their forensic ducks in a row. They're going to come guns blazing, looking to poke holes in every single bit of circumstantial evidence. All it takes is one juror unsure if the puzzle fully fits together to bring everything crashing down again. As Coffindaffer put it, circumstantial evidence cases are always high-stakes gambles. They're like trying to build a perfect Jenga tower in a courtroom where every piece could topple the whole thing. What we've learned today, though, is that digital and forensic evidence is king. Those little details, Barry's suspicious phone activity, the strange movements of his truck, the dart cap inexplicably ending up in the dryer with his shorts. Each one paints Barry into an increasingly tight corner. But is it enough to guarantee a conviction? That's the million-dollar question here. It's not just about justice for Suzanne, which she deserves without question, but also about whether our justice system can overcome previous missteps and actually deliver on its promise. Barry Morphew's trial isn't just about proving guilt. It's about restoring faith that meticulous investigative work and hard forensic science can hold someone accountable, even when that someone has already slipped through the cracks once before. So buckle up. This next round, it's going to get very bumpy. As Coffindaffer clearly outlined, it's shaping up to be even more intense, even more detailed, and definitely more high stakes than ever before. Let's just hope this time around Suzanne Morphew finally gets the justice she's been waiting for. What are your thoughts on this story? Let me know in the comment section on YouTube. If you're listening to us on the podcast platform, be sure to press subscribe there and then check out our YouTube channel. Just search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi so you can join in the conversation on this case and the many that we cover for you here at the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. I'm Tony Bruschi. We will talk again real soon.
Craving non-stop true crime updates? Press subscribe now and get the latest cases, analysis, and expert commentary delivered straight to your feed, only from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.